Hello. I want to talk you through my process of making a flipped lesson. I make my recordings on a Zoom, and I do not go for the one take method. Instead, I go for a no editing method where I do a couple of takes until I have one where I don't have to go through and edit it, and I can more or less publish it directly to YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to show by example how I would use the whys and hows of flipped learning Google Slides that Eli created. So I would take this and I would start the slideshow. I've already started screen sharing, of course, and I will start cover page and then I'll start reading. I might say a couple of things in the opening slide about what I want students to get out of the lesson, and then I'll move on. Each page will have a similar formatting, and each page will go through a couple of bullets, and I will often read out the text under the bullets. So for instance, if I were doing a lesson on this lesson, I would say in this PD session, we, Eli and Alex, will explain the philosophy and benefits of running a flipped classroom, describe our reflective processes and pedagogical reasoning for creating flipped lessons, and give you some direct instruction on creating flipped lessons in whichever method you're most interested. Now, I might extemporize a little bit and talk a bit about what's going on in the slide. I might sometimes just read it out. Now, I told you a second ago that I do a multiple takes until I get one I like approach to creating videos, but I do make liberal use of the pause recording function, especially if I want to think a little bit before I make a really clever point or ruin a take. So I just did that between a couple of seconds ago and now. I paused, I found a slide I wanted to talk about, and then I restarted. So I would say that in a traditional classroom, the teacher lectures and leads discussions in class, and students put content learning into practice at home. And in flipped classroom, we see the reverse. So you see in this image, a traditional classroom starts with lecture and goes to homework activities. The flipped classroom starts with lecture and at home, and then goes to classroom activities. Anyway, I'd go through saying very clever things in this beautiful slideshow that Eli's created. I like using animations for every single slide so that I can read them, maybe say something to the students about each bullet point before moving on. Perhaps I will switch to a different screen on Chrome if there's an animation I want to show. Anyway, I'll create my whole lesson, and then I will stop recording and I will end the session. Here we are a few minutes later, and I checked my email to find that the cloud recording is available. Wonderful. Click on some detail, and I'll download the recording. This is super easy. It downloads the audio file as well as the MP4. That's fine. I'm really only interested in the MP4. Now I'm going to pause the recording again in order to access my YouTube channel. Here's my YouTube channel. I'm going to click on where it says create, and then I'll go to upload video. And then I'll select the file that was just downloaded. It's in my downloads folder. And I'll open it. And it's now uploading the file. I will call this something useful like Unit 1, Video 1, Intro to Screencasting. I like using unit and video numbers. It really helps later so I can see all the videos I've made. I click next. It's made for kids. Of course, everything I do is made for kids. I can, and I really kind of leave it there. And it's going to check for copyrighted content. That's interesting. I hope it doesn't find any. We'll click next. It'll keep thinking about that. I like to leave everything public because I hope I'll be discovered as a YouTube sensation. And then I click on publish. It takes a couple of minutes to finish publishing. While it does that, I'm going to grab the link, which we're going to use in a minute. I'll click on copy video link. That's going to be very important. I can close it. It's not hard to get a copy from this channel content page, a copy of the link, but having the copy right there is pretty helpful. Next, I'll head over to nearpod.com in a separate screen, log in. You can log in using your friend's credentials, works totally fine, and it will, boom, show you where you are. And I'm going to click on create a lesson. You can only click on the create a lesson button over here. Notice I've made different folders where after I create the lesson, I can throw the lesson into a folder so that they're useful. So I can show you in chemistry, I have all the videos for each unit kind of neatly organized. But when I create one, I just kind of start over here. And let's just go and create the lesson together. So I'll call it the same thing as my YouTube video, U1V1 screencasting. Easy peasy. Okay, cool. Then I will add new contents. I like to start with a slide. And in the slide, I will say, once again, U1, V1, screencasting. And then here's what I like to do. So I just start this with a slide explaining the learning goals. And I want them to be transparent to students because later I'm going to ask students whether they felt like they've met the learning goals. Okay, I hit save and voila, great. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on add new, and now I'm going to click on video. And here's where that copy and pasted link that we had is going to come in handy. I'll click here, I'll click on Command V. You paste it and it's going to search for it. Look at that. It finds the video, intro to screencasting. It's going to take about a second. And here we go. If I press play on this, I want to talk you through my process. It just starts playing that video. Okay. Now this is a 3-minute 36 video. It's perfectly fine to give a student. Most of my videos end up being 12 to 15 minutes. That's a lot to watch in one take. So what I'm going to do for the most part is I'm going to use the trim function. And I'm going to say trim after a certain period. So if you remember before, I started by talking a bit about my process, and that was just the welcome slide. And then I'm going to end right before I started talking about what flipped learning is. Remember that very clever part of my video where I, for some reason, decided to re-explain flipped learning? Well, that was so I could separate this video into 2 sections. So now I'm going to drag a little bit until I get to the point where this slide just disappears, because that's what tells me that I stopped talking about the stuff on that slide. I'll click on trim and I'll click on save. So now it saves a video that's just part of my full YouTube video. Now, the next thing I'll do is add, and instead of doing content, I'm going to go to an activity. And so let's make a quiz. And I'll make it a 1-question quiz because, you know, we're all friends. And again, notice that lovely use of the pause recording feature. I just added a question. I didn't want to have people watch me write a question. It's not that exciting. But anyway, I just wrote a question based on the little video snippet that you all would have watched. Which of the following will Alex and Eli not do during this PD? I'm not trying to ask killer questions of students here. I'm really trying to see, are you taking notes? Do you understand the words I'm using? Of course, in a pedagogical context, the questions are going to be more tricky than this, which you can just answer from looking at the Google slide. But in fact, it's true that we will not juggle flaming torches, and that's it. Now, I could add a couple of other questions, and I usually do. I usually add 3 or so questions, but you know what, for this one, there's really only one thing I talked about. So one question is just fine. Okay. Now we're going to add the next section of the video. So go to add new, then video, then I have to go back to that recording to get the shareable link. Go back to the Nearpod, to YouTube, Control V, that shareable link comes back, boom, insert. Okay, now I'm going to show the rest of the video. So I'm going to have to use the trim function again. And I kind of remember that I stopped the first video around 2 minutes, a little before, a little after. So I'm just going to kind of slide until I see, there we go. Okay, so this, maybe 158, there we go. 1:59, 2 o'clock. This is really exciting. Boom, that's where the second part of this lecture started. And that's when the lecture ended. So I can just go there, click on trim, and now it's going to show a student who gets to the slide at that part of the video. I'm going to repeat the process. I'll add a little activity. I really do like the quizzes because they give kids immediate feedback. I also will often do a matching pairs. That allows you to associate like a word with a definition or a term with an example. Those are kind of cool. I sometimes will do fill in the blanks. Sometimes I'll do an open-ended question where I want kids to like show their work on something, but those are kind of getting advanced. Those are really often the questions I ask, they're border on skills that we'll practice together. So I don't always do those, but those are things I use. And you know, you play around and you see what you like to do. Well, I'm going to add another quiz question. And once again, I'm going to pause the video so you don't need to watch me. Okay, and in that time I paused, I added a question, I added some answers. I didn't say this before, but the way we tell Nearpod what the correct answer is you click on the little check mark. Incidentally, for these quiz questions, you can have multiple correct answers. You just can't have none. If you don't select one, it'll prompt you to. One little fun thing I did was I added an image on this little part over here. When you click on it before, it gives you an option to add an image. And so I did, and this is an image I took from the Google slide, super useful. A couple little things. You can do some modest formatting, like you can do superscripts and subscripts. You can do a couple of math type things. It's not really sophisticated, but like it gets the job done. So, you know, I like it. But you know, you're not going to Nearpod to do like serious formatting. Anyway, I'll click on save. It's great. Okay, now I'm going to add a couple of things. I'm going to add a new activity that is a collaborate board. I always do this, and this collaborate board is always called something like questions. And we'll tell kids, ask any questions that Nearpod brought up, or state any topics you'd like to work on. This can be super useful to let you know where kids are struggling, because the one issue you'll find with flipped learning is that kids will come into class essentially having watched the lecture, but you don't get that immediate feedback that you often get in class where kids are kind of like glazed over if they're not paying attention or really confused. This gives you that chance to see that. So we click on save, and we click on save and exit, and we're done. Yay. Okay, now, usually after this, I would drag this into the appropriate folder, but right now I'm just going to show you what we do. And what I do to make this an at-home thing is to click on student paste, and then it will create a link. Usually I will immediately click on where it says 29 days remaining and just make that go until June, because I want kids to be able to access these things till the end of the year. For some reason, Nearpod defaults to giving you a month to view a video. Yuck. Anyway, after that, you click on copy link. And now I have a link that I can paste into Canvas or whatever that will show the Nearpod. All right, that's what I do. Bye-bye.